Hi everyone and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm going to be doing something a little bit different again on my channel today, so I'm really wanting to branch out into a few different fields of photography here, and if you guys want to continue seeing this kind of content, please let me know. But today we're going to be talking about product photography, and specifically cosmetic product photography, because I feel that there's quite a large difference between this style of product photography and general product photography. I really do feel that there's a bit of an art to cosmetic product photography as well, and there's really like a lot of things that you can do with it. It's quite an interesting field of photography, and today I wanted to speak about some of the things that I think are really important to have if you've got your own home studio and you want to start doing some more of this kind of photography at home. I know that when I started experimenting more with cosmetic product photography, it was a little bit difficult for me to kind of settle into what I was doing, because there was quite a lot of aspects that I didn't think about before starting, and it wasn't until I was trying to photograph certain products that I was like, oh, I really need this thing, or something like this would come in handy for this, or maybe I need this tool. There's actually a lot of items that you can really pick up for product photography like this, and for some of these items I want to go through them today and kind of talk about some of the things you can use in a home studio in particular, or a professional studio even, to really help kind of elevate your product photography and make things a little bit easier for yourself as well. So to start off with, this is not necessarily going to be camera equipment related. I know that everyone probably wants to hear about what lenses they might need to use or what kind of lighting setup or, you know, that kind of thing, and I can definitely do more videos based off that, but I will just go through a few pieces of information first about certain products or gear that I have used in the past that definitely has helped with product photography. So lenses, it's really great if you've got a zoom lens, especially in a small space. We're talking mainly about home studios in this video today, so if you've got a zoom lens, this really helps when you're in a tighter space to work in and you really don't have a lot of room to move. I personally use a 24-70, but you can use a different variation of a zoom lens. It really doesn't matter too much. I think that having a wide range is really quite good though for smaller spaces, so 24-70 works really well for me. I also find that using a macro lens can be extremely helpful when you're photographing products, especially if you're wanting to get up close into textures. Like I spoke about before, this video is mainly geared towards cosmetic product photography, so you can really get some amazing, interesting shots when you get in very close to certain products, and you can create interesting patterns and interesting textures, and using a macro lens to capture this can really help. I'll quickly talk about lighting. I don't feel like this matters too much when you're first starting a home studio. I mean, you can go ahead and use natural light. On a sunny day, the full sunlight, especially like around the middle of the day when you get that really nice crisp hard shadow, can be actually really great for product photos, and especially cosmetic product photography. You can also take really nice golden hour shots with product photography. I just feel like there's a lot of options even with just using natural light. How if you're looking at artificial lighting and you're looking at either strobes or continuous, it doesn't really matter which one you choose. I actually prefer to use one or the other sometimes. Like sometimes it's really nice to use continuous because you can kind of see how the lighting is falling on an object, and because product photography tends to be quite fiddly and you're constantly moving things around, it's just nice to not have to keep, you know, taking test shots on your camera to see how strobe lighting is looking. Continuous lighting is obviously already there. You can kind of see how it's falling in real time. So I do like that aspect of using continuous lighting. However, with continuous lighting, you need to make sure that you have something that's kind of powerful enough. Quite often, I think a lot of beginners make this mistake of using a lighting setup, and particularly continuous lights that are too low a wattage, and they won't actually light your image enough. So I would just say that with continuous lights, but honestly, whether you've got strobes, continuous, it doesn't really matter. It's really personal preference in this instance. And now let's move on to some of the other items that I think are really important to have when photographing products. Now, the first items that I think are really imperative to have when you're photographing products are either stands or other props that you can use in the photographs. So at the moment, I'm just going to show you some of the stands that I have. These do not have to be professional product stands, even though you can order things like that online pretty easily. These are actually just from Kmart, and I got them in the bathroom section. This one is an upside down toilet brush holder, so I figured that that would work really well as a stand, and I've used it several times in my product shots. And this one's just a toothbrush holder, so you can flip it and there you go, you've got your stand. So I've got a couple of those, and I've also got this kind of like jewelry container. I think that's what it's for, but once again, you flip it upside down and you've got yourself a stand, which is great. So luckily, all of these actually happen to be in the same sort of section, and they had the same coloring, so they work quite well together even in a shot if you wanted to kind of move things around, for example, like, and you wanted to have a couple of products in the shot, you've got your kind of different tiers and different shapes of stands. So that's one way that you can kind of go about sourcing stands. Just go to your local Kmart or Target or whatever you have nearby. And the next thing that I mentioned was props. So this is the really fun part, and this can be incredibly fun if you go out shopping and pick up some items that you think would be really good in a product shoot. This is especially fun with cosmetic product photography because you can be really creative in what you do and what you produce. So once again on my trip to Kmart, I got these decorative salt stones. So they're actually just like pink rocks. I'll just grab one out so I can show you guys, and they look really cool next to different products. So I think that something like this is kind of interesting. I don't know if you can see this on camera very well, but they are very effective in product photos. I've also got some sand here that I've used in certain product shots. So this is really great if you're, for example, working with a sunscreen or something like that in terms of products. If you want a beachy theme with it, or you want something that kind of evokes summer, sand is really good for that. So that's another idea. And then I've got things like bottles like this. I can put flowers in them. I can do lots of different setups with these. And I've also got things like this, which are like trays. So you can kind of separate your product from the background, and it just makes it look that little bit more interesting. I've got lots of different props. I've got actually a few prop drawers that I use at home. So it's a really fun exercise to kind of collect some stuff that you think might work in a product shot. And moving on to the next thing now that I think is actually really important for cosmetic product photography in particular, and that is actually having like a sheet of either plexiglass, plastic, whatever you want to call it, and just having a transparent sheet of this. I apologize in advance because this one is quite dirty and I have not washed it properly since last time when I used it. But I do feel that these are imperative, especially when you're doing kind of like cosmetic art and things like that. I'll probably throw up a few photos on the screen just now, but it's really important to have that barrier between your backdrop, your paper backdrop most likely, and your product. So if you're wanting to kind of just make a bit of a mess and you want to photograph different textures, different creams, different cosmetics, it makes it just a lot easier to clean up when you can just kind of wipe this down instead of like ruining a table or ruining your paper backdrop and having to kind of chop that off every time you're doing a shoot. So I find these really, really helpful, and I just bought this from my local hardware store. I'd assume that most of you probably be able to find something similar at your local hardware store as well. One thing you just need to be aware of with those though is the fact that they are a little bit reflective. So if you can get something that's not as reflective, that's definitely preferred because it just makes it sometimes a little bit trickier to photograph, having to deal with some of those reflections. But usually if you get the right angle with your lighting and camera, it shouldn't be too big of an issue, but it's just something to be aware of. And speaking of backdrops in the last point, try to get yourself some quarter roll paper backdrops. These are so awesome for home studios because they're actually, like I said, a quarter roll, so they're definitely not as big as your full-size backdrops. They're nice and compact, easily fit into the space, and they're actually a lot cheaper as well than the full-size backdrops because even the half-size backdrops can be a little bit on the pricey side, but these are actually just so reasonable to purchase. I think I've got about 5 or 6 different colors, and they're just really great and super portable for even if you're wanting to photograph at a studio elsewhere. So I definitely recommend using these. And then as an alternative to paper backdrops, and really don't limit yourself just to paper backdrops either. There's so many different things that you can use as a base or as a backdrop for your product photography. But something like this. This is actually just a placemat that I've bought from Kmart again, and it's got a marble kind of texture on it. There's so many different types of placemats out there as well. When you actually start to go looking for them, they make really good bases for your products. So definitely don't always think that paper backdrops are the only way to go. You can use things like this as well. Moving on to the next point now, and this one might sound a little bit tacky. I'm not sure how this is going to come across, but a piece of white paper. Now this is basically what I use as a reflector for my product photography. So maybe to some of you that might be a bit sad, but to be honest, in a home studio setting where you don't have a lot of room, I find that this works a lot better for product photography as my other full-size reflectors are way too big for me to be carting around this room or my home studio. So this is really good for reflecting parts of the image as well, or reflecting parts of the product. Sometimes I don't want to fill in a shadow, for example, on the whole of the product and maybe just in one particular place in the image. So these are actually really great for that. And obviously they're extremely affordable. So if you've got a piece of white cardboard even at home or a piece of A4 paper, they both work really well. And now last but definitely not least, it's the tools. Now, this is something for some reason that I just didn't realize that I needed to have for the longest time when I started product photography. I really didn't think about it much. And it wasn't until I started to do more and experiment more with product photography that I was starting to realize that like, I couldn't just go into even doing cosmetic art and things like that and just have it look good straight out of the tubes or out of the bottles or anything like that. And that was kind of what I expected it to look like, but it really didn't look good. And I found out that I needed to use some tools to kind of help me along with with that. So I've actually just got a couple of different nail files here. There's a little metal one here that I find that's really good for scraping bits of product and cosmetics in particular, things like lipsticks and that. And you can also use spatulas, which I've actually got quite a few different types of spatulas that I can use to either cut products or to smear them on the plexiglass and make different textures with that. So really recommend that. And I've also got just a cheap nail file here. I bought a really cheap packet of nail files and they work really well as kind of like a spatula as well. I also got a set of brushes from my local hardware store, and these are once again really handy for doing things like cosmetic art and you want that perfect kind of brush stroke with the product that you're using. These are really good for that and they definitely help. I highly recommend considering some of these tools when you start to get into cosmetic product photography, because they definitely will help you in making the images look that little bit more perfected. And actually, just as a last point that I want to mention, I actually really think that it's great to have a table, a small table in an area in your house, wherever you've got your home studio, to use as the base for all your products to sit on and for you to put your backdrop on. I just think this works so much better. Quite often it's way better than putting it all on the floor, which is what I initially did, and that really hurt my back. So I definitely recommend doing this and having a small table where you can kind of set everything out, and it just makes it that little bit easier and cleaner, especially if you've got carpet. Well, I hope this video was really helpful for you guys, and if there are any of you who are aspiring product photographers, I hope that the tips that I've mentioned today with some of these items will really help you along in your journey with that. I also hope that these items will help in the sense that if you're on a budget and you're really not wanting to spend a lot of money, most of these items are very affordable, so hopefully they won't blow the budget too much. If you haven't subscribed to this channel already, make sure that you do. I'll be posting a lot more videos in future, and put down in the comment section below what your favorite tips or items are for product photography, as I'd love to hear them. But for now, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.